want some sauce?
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.
What's up everybody out there in YouTube land? Today we are going to be making carnitas, or you could just call it pork tacos, right? But this is going to end up being more like a pork, like a street taco type of meat. Also, the way I'm going to be making this is going to be different than some of the other ways that you've seen it, and I'm also going to try to give you specific measurements. And I know that's hard for me to do because I just cook by the way it smells, by the way it looks, through experience and things like that, okay? But I'm going to try to. I'm going to do what I can. And what's even better, I'm going to be making some homemade tortillas to go along with this. They're going to be flour. I've got one jalapeno. I've got some garlic here. Got a yellow onion. And I've got some pork shoulder, okay? And this pork shoulder, I've taken the skin off of it already, and I've put it inside a pot, the skin, and I'm rendering out some of the fat, and I'm just kind of frying it up a little bit so that way I can get some of the flavors and stuff out of it, then I can give it to my dog. So I'm just going to end up cutting up the onion like this, and I'm going to be putting it inside with the pork during the time that it's cooking up. I think for the amount of meat that we have, that this right here is good enough. Two schools of thought. We can leave it whole like this, okay, or we can cut it up. It's up to you. I'm going to end up kind of doing both. When it comes to the jalapeno, it's up to you. You put it in early, it'll dissolve, okay? So it'll impart the flavor, but you won't see the chunks or nothing. You put it in a little bit later, it'll impart the flavor, but you can still see little pieces of it. It's up to you, right? It's up to you. I'm going to put it in a little early. The amount of meat that I have here, what's that, a couple pounds? That's my guess, a couple pounds of meat, right? Medium-sized onion. You saw how many cloves of garlic, one jalapeno. So far you should be able to kind of keep track of what I'm doing. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take some oregano. The amount of oregano that I've got here is probably about 1.5 teaspoons, okay? And in fact, looking at that, I'm going to add a little bit more. So maybe 3/4 tablespoon, something like that, maybe. This is cumin. You can use cumin seed and just grind it up, but this is cumin. And I'm going to be putting about 1.5 teaspoons maybe. Something like that. Now this is chili powder. This is not the chili powder that's already got the cumin and garlic, and it's got the different salts and stuff in it to try to make it where it's not caking and doesn't have preservatives. This is just straight up New Mexico, California chili. It's just a chili that somebody had ground up. Okay, this chili powder, and we are going to be putting at least tablespoon, maybe 1.5 tablespoons. We got some paprika here, and paprika is nothing more than bell pepper that's been dried and ground up. And we want to put about 1 tablespoon of paprika in this as well. Ground black pepper, how much? I put at least teaspoon, maybe 1/4. It's up to you. Depends on how much you like ground black pepper. Salt. Salt's a big one. Now there's a problem. You're never going to really know how much salt to put in until you taste it near the end. So I always recommend to put just a little salt in now, and just near the time that it's finishing, taste it, and then at that point you'll know to add a little bit more. So for the amount that I have here, this is kosher salt. It's maybe 1/2 teaspoon. That's probably more than enough. We're going to find out. Now the pork skin and the fat has been rendering the whole time that I've been talking here. Okay, and I'm going to save the fat. Okay, so the fat, along with the skin, okay, has been just sitting in here and kind of rendering for quite a while, okay, and you're going to see that it has built up a decent amount of fat on the bottom of the pot here. That fat, we are not getting rid of that fat. That fat we are going to use for our tortillas, so that way we don't have to go out and buy lard. We have a little bit of lard still on the base there, so we can go ahead and add some of the things that we're going to need for our carnitas. We can add our meat, our onions, garlic and jalapeno. I'm going to add a couple more pieces of garlic to it. There's a lot of fat in this pork. We do not need to add any other fat to it at all. I'm going to be adding about a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, seasoning, and putting it inside there. And I may be adding some more seasoning a little bit later, depending on the smell of it. Water, enough to cover the meat. Now, this is just something I'm going to do. You don't have to, but I'm putting a couple of dry bay leaves inside there. Judging by the smell of it right now, it already smells really good. Just going by the smell of it right now, so we probably won't have to add anything to it. Okay, but let's give it a little bit of time. As soon as it starts simmering, I'll know. Okay, so we're going to be making some tortillas, and in this particular case, and we're not going to be using the dough hook, okay? We're going to end up using the paddle. Now, one of the things about making tortillas is you don't really use yeast, okay? What we're going to be using is baking powder. And if your baking powder is old, it might not work very good. Here's about a tablespoon of baking powder. Okay, that's 2 cups. It's about 3/4 of a teaspoon of kosher salt. Turn this on low and kind of let's get that stuff mixed up a little bit. Right here is the 1/4 of a cup of the rendered, but really what you want is a kind of a crumbly mess like this, okay? If it doesn't have enough crumbles in it, add some more fat. If you don't have enough fat, when you end up cooking it, it will end up becoming almost like a cracker, okay? So the fat is important, you gotta have it, okay? Now, some people will say I put way too much. Hey, these are my tortillas. If you don't like it, you can pound sand. But now I've got hot water, and I'm gonna add it until this kind of comes together and it makes somewhat of a sticky mess. I can always add more flour to this. As far as I'm concerned, that looks pretty good. So, I'm going to end up mixing this for a little bit, let some gluten get built up. You can use a dough hook if you want to, you can use your hands if you want to, but the idea now is to mix this up and get gluten formed, and that's going to take at least 4 to 5 minutes of working this dough in order to make this elastic. We need this to be elastic, okay? And that can only happen through kneading. So switch it to the dough hook, do it by hand, whatever it takes, but we want this to end up kind of becoming a semi-sticky ball, and we want it to be elastic. When I come over here and I smell this, it smells incredible. So I don't think I need to add anything to it, but right near the last maybe 30 minutes of cooking, I'll check it again. But at this point, I'm going to go ahead and throw the lid on it. So I'm going to bring this up to a boil. As soon as it gets to a boil, I'm going to turn it down where it can maintain a simmer or a very light boil. And I'm going to throw my lid on it like that. And I'm going to let this cook for probably a good 3 to 4 hours until the meat becomes fork tender. Okay, so you can see that I've got my hand marks in here. When I grab it, it is elastic, but it doesn't stick to my hands, does it? Or, well, very little, okay? But very elastic though, okay? So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that sit for a little bit. Covered. I'm going to put some saran wrap on top of it so moisture can't escape as well as things can't get in there. And when it's time to make the tortillas, I'm ready to roll. Okay, so it's been about 2.5 hours. The lid is off, okay? And using my silicone spatula, I can kind of come in here and break up the meat somewhat. There's going to be a lot of fat, but we can always remove the fat and stuff like that later. The important thing is the meat has gotten quite tender, and that's pretty much what we were looking for, but we have a lot of liquid in there we got to get rid of. But now is the time that we can throw our peppers in here. I've got some frozen bell peppers because simply it's cheaper than buying fresh ones. And with that, if you want to, you can add some fresh onion. The onion that is cooked is going to taste a little different. That will give a nice freshness to this. The bell peppers will, and that extra onion will, okay? So we're having compounded flavors, okay? That's probably going to end up taking 30 to 45 minutes, and I want to do it on a medium-low heat. Throughout the entire process, you don't want this jacked up high. You want it to be simmering or a very, very light boil. Usually after it comes to temperature, you don't have to go much higher than just like like a medium low, or sometimes even low. So let's go ahead and let that reduce. Okay, so it has been about 3 hours, maybe 3.5 hours, and you can see now that most of the liquid has boiled out. Okay, so we have tons and tons and tons and tons of flavor inside here, but this is when we want to check it for the salt. Okay, because if we check it before the water leaves and it tastes right, the water will leave but the salt will stay and it'll become too salty. So what we can do is just grab a little bit of the meat here and take a taste. That is incredibly good. Oh my God. Doesn't need salt, doesn't need pepper, doesn't need anything. That is amazing. All right, cast iron skillet. We got the cast iron skillet on the stove. We want this to get really hot. Okay, so right here is our dough, and it's just ever so slightly sticky. What we want to do is we want to grab it, squeeze this, and take off something about the size of maybe a golf ball. Here's a cool trick. Put a lid, grab it, cut around it. Okay, this is if it's giving you a hard time. At first, the dough was sticking to my rolling pin, and it didn't really want to cooperate. Okay, but that's perfect. So now we get to go ahead and take this and throw it inside our hot skillet. That is very hot. We can take this, throw it down. We're going to wait for bubbles. Right there. We're going to take our thing here, flip it over. Okay, take it, flip it. That's done. We can take it. We need to cover that. Okay, but it's done. Okay, so what are we going to end up using to help increase the flavor? Well, we're going to take a lime. We're going to roll it. I have a tomato here that's a little overripe. A little overripe, but that's okay. This is white onion right here. And white onion is much sweeter. It's not as harsh. Definitely a better choice when you're putting it raw on something, whether it is obviously here tacos or a burrito or whatever else we're planning on making. And of course, you're going to have some type of cilantro. Now the thing about cilantro is there's a lot of people that will cut up the stems too. And in my experience, the stems a lot of times are a little bitter. Okay. After you end up having your leaves, you can go ahead and just kind of grab them. Try to put them in a small pile, kind of like this, as best as you can, and cut them up like this. Okay. I'm an advocate for not using lettuce. I think you should use cabbage. So I get angel hair coleslaw, and you're spending more than just buying the cabbage. You could do it yourself, but this makes it, I think, a lot better. And right here we got queso fresco, which is the cheese that we could use for this, which is it's a really good cheese. This cheese is great. It's dynamite. It's a little salty, somewhere between mozzarella and cottage cheese. It's really good. So we'll take our tortilla here, and then we'll put some of our carnitas, and you can see a lot of the moisture has left, so it won't drip too much. And that's good news. A little bit of onion. You could always put avocado on this too. Okay, but we're going to put some tomato, a little bit of cilantro, and then we just end up crumbling up the queso fresco. A little bit of lime juice, and we can say we have one. There we go, guys. Check that out. Those are some serious tacos, man. It smells incredible in here. The tortillas are nice and thick. They're not going to end up breaking down on you. They're going to hold that food. They're not going to get soggy. They've got that lard in them, so it's going to have that nice flavor. Everything is just right. Smells incredible in here. And these are the type of tacos that you should serve to somebody if you say, I'm going to be making you some tacos. Anyway, guys, that is that. And until next time, Talk to you later.